Public Affairs very much thanks Residco, our sole corporate underwriter, for helping to make the production of this show possible.
Are they being vetted at all? Is it really just, have you been, you've been at the border?
I certainly have. I'm from Texas, so I've spent a lot of time down there.
So is it a completely open border? Do people just walk across?
Yep, I would say so. I would say that they walk across and they're welcomed by our own government. So we're paying our taxes, which goes to pay the salary of my opponent. We paid him almost $2 million from our pockets to him to make us secure. Is that too much to ask? Forget about crime and inflation and so many other problems we're having. If they can't keep us safe and secure our border, without a border, we don't have a country. And right now, we don't have a border. I am not a politician. The hats I wear say no more career politicians. The whole notion of people being politicians for life and making a living and making money at our expense and to our detriment is something that I abhor. And frankly, Raja is, he's guilty of that. He's got $17 million of lobby money, and who knows where that money comes
That's
from.
That's cash on hand now?
That's cash on hand, $17 million. That's more than 3 times what anybody else in Illinois has.
You're watching Public Affairs. Berkowitz is my name, and politics is our game. And we will be doing lots of public policy and politics today because we have as our guest Mark Rice. He is the Republican nominee in the 8th Congressional District. Mark, just get right to it. We'll get back and tell people more about you and your opponent as we get into the show. But for now, what's the most important issue in the 8th Congressional District in that election that's coming up on November 5?
I would have to say the border is the #1 issue in our election for the constituents in the 8th District.
Why is that so? What's going on in the border that people are, what is it, 750,000 constituents in the 8th Congressional District?
Roughly, yes. Yes, I know it might sound a little crazy if you're not in the 8th District because we're in the middle of the country. We're very far from the southern border, but it is affecting everybody in so many different ways. And it's what people care about. Just walking here, Jeff, I had to walk through. I got married at the Standard Club. You remember this old Standard Club just down the street, Plymouth Court?
Right.
Now there's 2,000. It was a beautiful club. Now there's 2,000 illegals living in the Standard Club, almost all of them from Venezuela, which nothing wrong with that, nothing wrong with those people. But I can tell you that they had over 500 police calls, 911 calls, and police visiting the Standard Club just in last year. So that's more than 1 a day where there's some kind of violent crime going on, some type of a problem going on. And they are out, and it is happening, and it's affecting people on a daily basis. Not to mention how that ties in with fentanyl deaths, how that ties in with crime that's happening related to that, and how upset so many people are that they're getting all these free benefits, whereas our veterans and our homeless and our American citizens are being neglected.
So the big picture, you mentioned the 8th and how that's affecting it, and parts of Chicago are actually in the 8th. Mostly the 8th Congressional District is the far western suburbs of Chicago, right?
Yes.
But the big picture in the country,
what
was the numbers, and however you measure it, what were the numbers of illegal immigration, say, under Trump? And then what has it been under Biden, roughly? Big numbers.
Big numbers, it's gone up 5 times. Under Trump, it was under control, and Tom Homan, who's somebody that endorses me, and I can't wait to get him back in there as the border czar. He was the head of ICE, and my whole, for my campaign, what people say and what I say, I'm proud of it, is bring back ICE, vote for Rice. We've got to take control of our southern border, and the fact that we are not is so evident for anybody to see, and my opponent has been in office basically during that whole time. So he was there for the 4 years of Trump. His name is Raja. We can get into that later. And then he's now been in there for 3 more years, or 3.5 years under Biden, and we've seen basically an under control border where we knew who was coming across, we vetted these people, and the numbers were manageable, to something completely out of control, completely unmanageable, and who knows who some of these people are that are coming over. It's very scary, and it's a big issue.
Are they being vetted at all? Is it really just, have you been, you've been at the border?
I certainly have. I'm from Texas, so I've spent
Right.
a lot of time down there.
So is it a completely open border? Do people just walk across?
Yep, I would say so. I would say that they walk across and they're welcomed by our own government. So we're paying our taxes, which goes to pay the salary of my opponent. We paid him almost $2 million from our pockets to him to make us secure. Is that too much to ask? Forget about crime and inflation and so many other problems we're having. If they can't keep us safe and secure our border, without a border, we don't have a country. And right now, we don't have a border.
Well, does Raja talk about this? As you say, he's been there for the 4 years of Trump, now the 4 years of Biden. Is it something he has town meetings on? He solicits views on illegal immigration? You hear him talking about that?
He talks about it just like Kamala Harris talks about it, which is crickets, nothing, because it's a complete embarrassment. And with Mayorkas and all the news that comes out, now people can see. The media wants to keep it from me, but like I said, just walking over here, I walked by the Standard Club. There were police cars out front. My own son, you actually know one of my sons, that he actually got mugged by 3 of these illegals here. They sprayed mace in his eyes. I think he'll be okay. But I mean, it is affecting everybody on so many different levels. And it's just so insulting that we're not only welcoming these people, but we're paying money that we do not have to clothe and house and educate and on medical. And it's just so hurtful that it's become a big issue. And it's something that I talk a lot about. While, to answer your question, my opponent can't talk about it because it's on his watch.
He can't say anything because he's wedded to the Biden policy?
Yeah, he actually worked for Biden and Obama during their campaign. So he's part of that whole group. When Obama ran and won, he was one of his campaign workers here. And then when he won, he went into the White House and was a staffer. So he is quite tied in with Obama, Biden, now Harris. And yeah, he votes pretty much 100% with those guys. And as you know, they might talk a little bit. We hear a lot of talk out of Washington, but they don't do a darn thing. And in terms of the border, that's what they've done. They've opened it wide open, and we have ways to fix that. We can fix that right away. As soon as we win this next election, this is just common sense. But for now, it's open. Somebody wants to come here,
So
they
what's
come
the
right
fix?
across.
What's the fix? If you were talking to the next president of the United States, whether
I
it's
have
Kamala
spoken
Harris
to
or
the
whether
next.
it's Donald Trump.
Well, I've spoken to him. His name's Donald Trump.
Yeah, and what would you tell him, or what
Well, I
would
don't
he
even
say?
have to tell him because we're in sync on this. You reinstate Title 42. You reinstate this Remain in Mexico policy. So if people want to come to this country, we welcome immigrants. We're a country of immigrants, but that will stop the flow along with securing the border, just enforcing the laws that are on the books. We don't even need a lot of new laws. We just need enforcement, which we do not have. And in doing that, you stop the flow. Now, there's another issue which I touched on, which is fentanyl is killing 110,000, mostly American children, mostly young people. And I've been to 4 of those funerals myself. This is not something that happens somewhere else to somebody else. This is happening. A lot of these kids are just innocent kids. They didn't know what they were doing or getting into, and they're now dead. That is 300 children a day. So today, there will be a phone call, not a phone call, 300 phone calls to American parents saying, I regret to inform you, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, your child is dead from fentanyl poisoning. So the plan is not only to secure the border, but to go down into Mexico and put a stop to the trafficking, not just the sex trafficking and all of those horrible things, which are horrible, but this fentanyl poisoning is terrorism at its finest. We're going to call these people, these cartels like Sinaloa and others that are bringing this stuff over, we're going to call them terrorists, which they are, and we're going to go down there and prosecute them and bring them to justice and just put a stop to it.
So if I'm Raja and I'm right here, what do you tell me? What do you say to the congressman from the 8th Congressional District?
I'm sure he's a nice guy, and I've got nothing against him personally.
You know him. You've met him.
I've met him a couple times. We're probably not the best friends, I suppose, but we are running against each other, and he says things about me, and I probably say things about him. But at the end of the day, I'm a regular guy running for Congress because I've had enough. And a lot of people that I know are waking up, and maybe I'm one of those too. I was asleep, running my business, religion, children, nonprofit things that I do, and I wasn't paying attention. Well, we're all paying attention now because it's affecting us. And I say, Raja, I suppose thank you for your service, but your time is up. It's time for regular people to wake up and take control of what's going on.
So when you've talked to him, and does he deny that the borders are open? Does he deny that people aren't being vetted as they come across? Do you ever get specific, and how does he defend that?
So these politicians have gotten very good, and I'm running for office. I am not a politician. The hats I wear say no more career politicians. The whole notion of people being politicians for life and making a living and making money at our expense and to our detriment is something that I abhor. And frankly, Raja is, he's guilty of that. He's got $17 million of lobby money, and who knows where that money comes
That's
from.
cash on hand right now?
That's cash on hand, $17 million. That's more than 3 times what anybody else in Illinois has. So he is quite the successful entrepreneur at getting money, and money is really at the root cause of what's wrong with our country right now. These politicians.
Okay, so what does he say in response to the specifics?
No, they don't say anything.
He doesn't defend it.
They do the little dipsy-do. They talk about something else, or they blame it on Trump. Anytime there's a problem that is on their watch and it is their fault, and maybe their lobbyists are giving them money to keep the border open. But they basically blame Trump or blame somebody else, certainly not themselves.
So maybe we could get him here. You could have a
That'd be
conversation.
nice, yeah.
You'd like to do that. A little back and forth, respectful.
That'd be great. I would love it.
He could answer these questions.
I'm very respectful to Raja, but I can't help but be angry. And what really makes me mad is when politicians, Raja, Harris, all of them, they say, well, okay, the border's a mess. Then maybe they'll freely admit that. But they say, just reelect us and give us another shot, and we're going to fix it. I mean, fool me once, shame on you. Shame on me. Shame on you. Excuse me. Fool me twice, shame on you. So we've got to change that mentality. We need to put people in there that are just talk to you like you're a person, not like you're. I frankly think that most politicians don't think we know what we're doing. They think that they call us the great unwashed. The unwashed masses.
Okay. So we've covered illegal immigration.
Yes.
Number 2 issue?
Number 2 would be crime, which is related. But here in Chicago, for example, and our district, the 8th, starts in the city of Chicago and then goes out to the west suburbs. And crime affects everybody. It doesn't matter if you live in the suburbs or the city. I was living out in Glencoe, out in the north suburbs. And even in my own house, we had 2 cars stolen at different times from a gang. We live across from the Glencoe golf course, and this super safe, what people think is a safe suburb. They caught a couple of them, so we know they were gang members, actually from the south side and west side of Chicago. But the crime that's in the city, which is just scary, I mean, it's off the charts. We know, for example, that crime is up significantly, and the politicians and the media even will try to trick you by saying that crime is, it's down, because the rate of increase is lower. I mean, that's just numbers, but the fact is there's more crime than ever. There's more gun violence on really every way, and it's not just in the city, it's out in the suburbs, and businesses are leaving because they're being robbed, and their lives are being destroyed with all this crime, and we're not supporting the police. Our prosecutors are not prosecuting. Kim Foxx is a disaster.
So what can you do? What can you do about supporting the police if you're a congressman? I mean, is it the bully pulpit? What do you think you would do if you were there instead of Raja about crime?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking, because Raja, my opponent, and many others, they do nothing. They do less than nothing. What they try to do is try to just tell you over and over that things are good, that there is no crime, or that crime is somehow being improved. And they think you'll believe it, but most people don't.
Raja would say there's no crime anywhere. Does he admit there's substantial crime in the city of Chicago?
I've heard him admit a little bit of that, but it's always with, but things are getting better. But we've got this program and that program. For instance, we were on a call just yesterday. He was on a call, and we were listening in about gun, what we could do about gun control. And some of their ideas are so far left-leaning that they just are missing the mark completely. I think it's really what maybe a poll says.
Did they talk about the arrest rate in Chicago?
They can't talk about that. They can't talk about the fact that if you commit a crime in Chicago and really the environs, you have only about a 5% chance of getting convicted, convicted.
Arrested. Forget the convicted. 5% of them are arrested.
Right, so 95% of them get away with it.
Without even going further, if they're not arrested, they're not going to be convicted.
You've got no chance. And then after that, though, when they do get arrested, the police officers that I talk to, and we really support the police, and we're all about supporting the blue and all that. But anyway, their biggest complaint is they're not allowed to do their job. In fact, I will give you just one little story. I was over by where was I? Next to the Wrigley Building. Very nice area, lots of tourists. And a guy comes up to me and my daughter and my dog Milton, who's named after Milton Friedman, and says, "I'm going to blank kill you," and to me and my daughter. And then he says, "And then I'm going to kill your blanking dog too." That's pretty horrific. And my daughter was crying.
And where was this? Where did this happen?
Right in Michigan Avenue, right by the Wrigley Building. That's
right
where
there,
we were
right downtown
taking the
Chicago,
dog to walk. Right downtown.
The sort of part of what used to be called the Magnificent
Mile.
Right. I don't know if we still say that.
Now the Scary Mile.
Yeah, right.
I don't know.
Okay.
There's a lot of crime there. But anyway, it was crazy. But there happened to be a police officer there. So we went over to the police officer and I said, "Officer, I want you to know there's a guy just threatening our life, and can you go arrest him?" He's like, "Well, did he stab you? Did he do anything?" And I'm like, "No, but he's yelling and screaming and he's right in your face threatening to kill you." He's like, "Well, if he didn't stab you, there's nothing I can do. My hands are tied." And then he says to me, "Well, where do you live?" And I pointed, at the time we were living right there, and I pointed to the building. He's like, "Oh, well, that's the problem." He says, "You shouldn't be living in this area. This is dangerous. It's dangerous around here." He says, "I wouldn't let my family live here." And then I got to talking to him more.
This is right downtown Chicago.
Yeah.
Right
downtown.
What used to be one of the nicer areas of Chicago.
One of the nicest in the world.
Right.
We have the most beautiful city in the world, actually.
And the cop is telling you shouldn't live here.
The policies that the police have to follow do not enable them to keep us safe. And that police officer, who, by the way, is voting for me, because I got to know him a little bit, but so we can vote. That's something we can do to try to change this policy. But until we get rid of the Kim Foxes of the world who won't prosecute, or Mayor Johnsons of the world who really are on the side of the criminals instead of on the side of the citizens, we're not going to have a city to live in.
So this spills over to the 8th because people in the 8th Congressional District often work in Chicago. They want to visit Chicago. They want to enjoy the many benefits of Chicago. So they care about crime in Chicago.
They do, but it's not just that, Jeff. Crime is out in the suburbs, like I said.
It spills over there.
And the border crisis. These immigrants, they're out in the suburbs by the hundreds.
In Cook County,
even by the thousands.
8th District.
I'm Cook County.
Cook County is in the 8th.
Cook, DuPage, and Kane. But they're in all three counties.
Right.
The crime, the drugs, the violence, and frankly, in much of the area, I would say.
So what Kim Fox does matters to people in the 8th?
Sure. The Safety Act, letting criminals out of prisons, where do you think they're going to go? I mean, sure, they're in the city, but they go where opportunity is.
So what would you tell Kim Fox? If you had the bully pulpit, if you were Raja and you were the current congressman of the 8th, talk to Kim Fox.
That's easy.
What would you tell her?
I wouldn't try to reason with her. I would say, "You're fired," and I would do what I can to remove her from office.
Really? Yeah.
No, but legislatively, there are things to do to remove people who are incompetent at their jobs. And I would be just like that.
And why is she incompetent?
Because she's letting criminals go. She's literally not prosecuting people who commit crimes. They are making crime legal. And how scary is that to live in a city where it's legal to commit crimes? It's legal to go up to my daughter and say, "I'm going to kill you and your dog too." It's intolerable.
So in the last 4 or 5 years, what's the big picture? Because we had pre-COVID, we've had COVID, we're out of COVID. People are saying, well, crimes are way down. Any metrics, any way to give people an idea? What's happened in Chicago in the last 5 years in crime?
Well, so the police are demoralized.
With major crimes.
I'll give you like bullet points I've got right here.
Okay.
Well,
aggravated assault,
5% arrest rate, like we talked about, which is ridiculous. And how many crimes go unreported? You call 911, by the way, you have a 60% chance that you won't get a police call. You won't get police officers coming out. And then, of course, the mayor and like we talked about, the prosecutors. So it's almost a zero chance that if somebody commits a crime that they're going to be punished. And when there are no consequences for bad behavior, you're going to get a lot more of it. There's a lot of people out there struggling, and for that, it's very sad. But their ability to just go and terrorize other people and get free stuff by robbing and looting and committing even violent crimes, it's just got to stop. And we, the people, have got to do something about it.
So crime is still going up. It's gone up from pre-COVID to post-COVID, and maybe the rate of growth.
I've got it right here,
up.
50,000 to 77,000. So what's that? About a 50% increase, even more than a 50% increase in major crimes since COVID.
And Raja doesn't talk about this at all.
No. Doesn't mention it at all.
Yeah, we'd like to have him
We're
come
paying
on.
him $1.5 million, $2 million
So you guys,
to do something. He's doing nothing.
Look, people say we want democracy. People have democracy. They'll have the chance to vote on November 5.
Yep.
But they need to be informed.
Right.
They're hearing from you now. We need to hear from Raja. You guys need to have a conversation, challenge each other.
I agree. We should be having a couple debates, as I understand they're planned, but this is what it's all about. We've got to communicate with the people and make sure that we're listening to the people, and that's what's missing. We need servant leaders who are there for the people, for the kids, for the grandkids, not for themselves, not for looking pretty and having a title and making money and getting $17 million in donations, but by doing what must be done to stop and change and course correct some of these massive problems that we have.
All right. Thank you so much, Mark Rice, Republican nominee in the 8th Congressional District. Come back soon. Come back often.
I've enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
And you come back next week and every week to Public Affairs.